Mark Davis, hi, from DFW, Salem Media Group, North Texas headquarters. What do you see behind my head? You see a Dallas skyline in the daylight, something I have never, in fact, seen at the beginning of any Hugh Hewitt show. Been here with you guys a lot, been here for Hugh a lot. It is always a joy. And as Hugh makes the jump, as he has in just recent weeks, to fill, the Seb Gorka show vacancy, as Seb goes off to, what was it he was doing? Oh, yes, serving the country, just like Dan Bongino. What is it? What are these talk show guys leaving this gig and going off to actually serve humanity and serve the country? What is going on? I'll tell you what's going on. A heart for service. And Hugh Hewitt has that heart for service in this realm. And wherever he goes, I will follow. And I know Kurt and everybody who fills in for Hugh, Ed Morrissey. Of course, Dwayne kind of has to. And we'll be saying hi to him in the PhD weight loss and how you doing vein here in just a little bit. But look, if we've never met, Mark Davis, I do the Happy Morning Show here at 6:60 a.m. The Answer in DFW. And the usual drill for the decade-ish that Hugh did early, oh my gosh, so early morning, is I would get up in the middle of the night, come in to the building where I work, and do the Hewitt show, and then slide down the bat pole and do the rest of my own local show. Now, I had a quick nap. Are you kidding me? I am living large and in charge. And so it gives me unbridled energy to dive into what we need to do today. What will we talk about? Some days I may need as many as 3 talk shows. So glad to have a second one, because let me tell you what we did on my local show, my first show of the day. Woke up this morning with just still walking on air from last night. It should surprise no one that I and conservative radio and conservative America really enjoyed the speech last night. That's kind of baked in. But I will tell you that if you had told me middle of the day yesterday, hey, Mark, Trump's going to go about an hour 40, I'd have said, okay, it's largely going to be great because it's him, but there might be some meandering, there might be some wandering, there might be who knows what, kind of like you would occasionally get at the rallies. I love the rallies. Sometimes I'd watch like live coverage of a rally and go, okay, let's, our job here is done. That never happened last night. That not only did it never happen, I don't want to say I wish it had been longer, but it was all muscle, no fat, and boy, have I got to ask you about it. So let's go. We got plenty of guests. Got Mary Katherine Ham, great Stephen Moore is coming along to talk tariffs and other economic things later on. All kinds of folks that you're used to hearing here with you, and also folks that the wonderful Danielle has secured just because I asked for them. It's always great to be here. And again, Mark Davis, follow me in the Twitter world, the X world, at Mark Davis. And let's get going. 1-800-520-1234. 1-800-520-1234. I'm going to ask you some questions. I'm going to give you my answers, and then we're going to find out if your answers are the same as mine or if maybe they may differ. That's why we have phone lines. 1-800-520-1234 here on the Hugh Hewitt Show. So, what was it that made it singularly great? We find ourselves here with Hugh in the afternoon, back in the old early morning mindset, it'd be get up and talk about the speech, and really only the speech. At this time frame here in the middle portion of the day, wherever you may happen to be across America's time zones, we not only have the speech last night that we can react to, but we can react to the reaction. I spent, again, my local show this morning in DFW talking about the speech, and there was certainly some reaction overnight and social media and various people saying some things in the wee hours. But now I've had a good part of the day to watch what Democrat America has to say about what was done to them. I mean, hello, police. I'd like to report a murder. I'd like to report, at the very least, an assault. But interestingly, the Democrats hurt their own cause by making a lot of the damage self-inflicted. Because as remarkable as the Trump speech itself was, there was something singularly remarkable about what the Democrats did in reply. He makes them crazy. Well, they're already crazy. He makes them crazier. They are innately crazy. He makes them behaviorally crazy. And so as it starts, let's set the scene here for a little bit and start at the beginning, which is a good place to start. And it's the kind, and I mentioned on my local show yesterday, here comes the Trump speech. There'll be plenty of things in there that are yay conservatives, hooray Republicans, victories for our side, all of which is true. But a lot of it would be the kinds of things, also called why he won, a number of things that everybody should be able to celebrate. A stronger country, a more vibrant country, a country with actual borders, things like that. Cut number one, he set the tone. Enjoy.
6 weeks ago, I stood beneath the dome of this Capitol and proclaimed the dawn of the golden age of America. From that moment on, it has been nothing but swift and unrelenting action to usher in the greatest and most successful era in the history of our country. We have accomplished more in 43 days than most administrations accomplished in 4 years or 8 years, and we are just getting started.
There is something happening. Of course, they're in the hall, in the chamber. They have their cute little signs. And the ladies had their cute little pink dresses. Boy, that takes a lot of nerve, doesn't it? To wear pink, a color emblematic of the female half of humanity, a color emblematic of girlhood, womanhood. Ladies, way to stand up for your fellow women. Way to stand up for girls by saying it's perfectly okay to have a man spike a volleyball at maximum speed into the face of a female player. Young lady who was victimized by that was in the house last night. A lot of people up in the audience, the family of Corey Comparatore, the boy, don't get me started on DJ Daniel. Actually, you can get me started on DJ Daniel and Al Green. I played some Al Green, Let's Stay Together on the show. Maybe we should go get that because you need to have at least some Al Green that people can like. Because the Congressman Al Green is a jackass. That's baked in. Know that he files impeachment articles against Trump like I go to the store for juice. Like every few days, it just happens. So I tweeted this morning that Houston is not Al Green. Houston is DJ Daniel. That is the spirit of my state. That is the spirit of the great city of Houston. And that was, even for Democrats, simply wretched, wretched behavior. If you missed it, it's cut 3. Let's see how this went last night. Go.
Mr. Green, take your seat. Take your seat, sir. Take your seat. Finding that members continue to engage in willful and concerted disruption of proper decorum, the chair now directs the Sergeant-at-Arms to restore order. Remove this gentleman from the chamber. Members are directed to uphold and maintain decorum in the House. Mr. President, you continue.
So, to lay down some bona fides for you, I did not like it when South Carolina Republican yelled at Obama some years back as he was lying about what Obamacare would and would not do. Joe Wilson said, "You lie!" He was correct about that. Nonetheless, and this didn't go over big with the audience because the audience, and maybe this audience, just loved when Joe Wilson yelled out, "You lie." Well, that took a millisecond and was nothing like this. I was not a fan, and I think Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert are somewhat over-criticized. They tend to do the right thing, vote for the right thing, but they're yelling during Biden. I didn't like that either. Silly me, I like decorum. To any opposition party, Republicans listening to a Democrat president, which I hope we don't see for a really long time, or Democrats listening to a Republican president, which I hope is the pattern for the next dozen-ish years, it is understood that the president's going to be saying things that you disagree with. rather than a lot of stupid stunts, sit, look expressionless if you like, look bored if you like, look dismissive if you like, whatever you want to do. And then after the speech is over, walk out and describe the ways in which you think everything the guy said was wrong. That's what a grown-up does. These people were petulant children. It was ridiculous. So in the Al Green case, censure or no, let me put that to you next. 1-800-520-1234. Join us. I'm just coming off my local campaign for my Friends of Food for the Poor, and we had a really successful year. I am sensing that you folks are in the mood to do something really, really special. So I'm going to have confidence that the Hugh Hewitt audience is going to do precisely the same on a national scale. So Hugh's campaign is underway to feed. There's needy kids and there's needy kids. There's poverty and there's poverty. I have been to Haiti and to Guatemala with Food for the Poor, a magnificent Christian nonprofit international relief organization, in just a couple of days. Monday, Tuesday, men and women just like you already helping to fill the bellies of boys and girls who are born into extreme poverty through Latin America, the Caribbean, El Salvador, and elsewise. Skyrocketing food prices combined with limited job opportunities, they're just crushing families. Salvadoran kids under 5 face hunger, an anemia rate of 25%. The only opportunity they have for a healthy life is through lunches they get at school, and that's where you and I come in. Whatever you can give will make a difference, as we hear from this young lady named Sarah.
I just wanted to say I really admire your work with Food for the Poor each year. And I'm 16 years old. I live at home, so I don't really make a whole lot of money. But I have an envelope that I keep on my nightstand, and each time I do get some money, I put a little bit away throughout the year, maybe like $1 or $2, and it's for Food for the Poor. And so this year I saved up $80 to give, and I'm not saying any of this to brag. I just wanted to encourage your listeners who probably make more money than I do. And so if you can just spare a little bit, that would be good. Bye.
Sarah, there's an old saying, it ain't bragging if you can back it up. and listen, this young lady coughing up $80, are you kidding? So listen, there's a banner at the top of HughHewitt.com that reads, Feed Their Future. And if you click on it, I have a message of hope. And this is not a USAID federal bureaucracy nonsense environment. We're talking a tiny sliver of overhead. There are no mahogany tables or luxury jets at Food for the Poor. So it's a win-win to go to HughHewitt.com, click the Feed Their Future banner at the top of that homepage, Feed Their Future at HughHewitt.com, or call 855-359-4673, 855-359-4673. Or just text the word Hewitt, Hewitt, to 51555. We'll send you back the link. It doesn't take anything automatically. It sends you the link, and you can do what you can. And whatever you can do, thank you enormously. HughHewitt.com. Click Feed Their Future at HughHewitt.com. Thank you very, very much. So I had my spirit lifted, my psyche fed by this magnificent speech last night. I mean, you knew what it was going to be. You knew how it was going to go. It was vintage Trump. And what we saw was a speech that came in hot in a number of ways because it's him. And then you saw the Democrats who were in a combative mood. So I mentioned I was going to ask you about Al Green, to censure or not to censure. I actually started to take my own unofficial poll of members of Congress. I had both Texas Congressman Roger Williams, District 25, and the wonderful, freshly installed Brandon Gill of District 26. Brandon said if there's no censure resolution, by middle of the day, he will file one. And I bandied this back and forth because Al Green's behavior was, of course, execrable, and it left me of two minds. One is, censure, let's go. It's deserved. It's a consequence. I'm all about consequences, et cetera, et cetera. That one is self-evident. But it also occurred to me, I also heard the words of William James, the father of modern psychology. Take this and use it for free. There's great wisdom in knowing what to ignore. There's great wisdom in knowing what, and by that I mean whom, to ignore. And if we're sitting here spinning our wheels and doing a censure vote, and Democrats are going to vote no, Republicans are going to vote yes, wouldn't he in a way wear it like a badge of honor? And do you want to do that? Isn't it best to just forget he was ever born, forget that even happened last night? And so that voice begins to take hold. But then the other voice says, nope, censure it's called for. In a way, if we seem stoic about it, it's kind of like letting it go. And we can't let garbage like this go. We just can't. If someone had brought to me an assignment and said, Mark, here comes the Trump speech. It's going to be pretty partisan. It's not going to be just things I'm doing that are great, but reasons why the other party is horrible, screwed up the country for 4 years, and thank God Kamala's not president. It's like, okay, I'm all in for that. Fantastic. There's this myth that State of the Union addresses, which this technically was not because it's his first, but it was a State of the Union address. You know it, I know it. And by the way, that's kind of odd. I think the reason that it started, I believe, with Reagan. Reagan's first in 81 was not. Bush 41's first in 89 was not technically a State of the Union. Bill Clinton's first in 1993. I mean, why? I mean, I get the logic has been that if you haven't been president, you are less equipped to tell everybody what the State of the Union is. Well, I ain't president. I know what the State of the Union is. I think if you have been president, even if it's just for a few weeks, you're like, okay, I just took the reins. Here's what the State of the Union seems to be. So let's make the State of the Union the State of the Union again. Can I get an amen for that? So he starts in on this, and if somebody had given me the task of how can the Democrats screw this up the most, I would have said, well, let's give them some stupid little signs to hold. Let's have the ladies wear a protest color, but wait a minute, this will be good. Let's make it pink so that everybody can be reminded how they brutalize the rights of women by suggesting that it's okay to have men on sports teams. And then let's have one member of the House go so far off the rails that he has to be very nearly dragged from the proceedings. Do those things, I will be happy. They did all those things, and I am happy. And we're happy to hear from you. 1-800-520-1234. Let's talk to some folks. We are in the lovely Hoosier state of Indiana. Rebecca, Mark Davis in for Hugh. Good Wednesday to you. How you doing?
Oh, I am doing wonderful after last night. I think the whole block knows how I feel about Trump because I was hooping and hollering and even my cat's still scared of me.
It sounds festive.
Happy.
What was it? What did you expect? What did you like the most? Was there a moment that stood out to you? And what was your high point?
Oh, let's see. Especially whenever they trotted that one old boy out, and then these Democrats sitting there with their little fans up in the air like that. Like, what is that?
I know. I think that is a proper response, Rebecca. Thank you. What is that? I mean, I am old enough to remember Democrats whom I would disagree with about largely everything, but at least they had kind of a shred of dignity, some semblance of self-awareness, and that Democrat Party seems dead. Let's go to North Georgia. Tom, Mark Davis in for you. Good Wednesday to you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and so are you, as you usually do when you substitute. Sorry I don't get your show.
Thanks.
But anyway, I thought I got 4 quick points. Trump, when he said, we didn't need a new law, we just needed a new president, that was amazing.
Superb.
When you said something about the Dems with the pink on, I was thinking more like they're pinkos. So maybe
it was appropriate.
That was a confession.
Yes.
And then in the movie Crash, when Terrence Howard won the Academy Award, Terrence Howard said to Ludacris, "You embarrass me. You embarrass yourself." I think that's what the Dems did, especially that guy who got tossed.
Yes.
And then finally, the RFK moment was when Trump said, our country is obviously healthier than I thought it was because we got all these people living to be this age. And I want RFK.
Exactly.
I want RFK to assign a task force to go out and talk to these people to help the rest of us get healthy, making America healthy again.
Find those people who are 200 plus years old. Precisely right. And also with RFK Jr., whom the Democrats have now decided they hate, even though he ran for president in their party. You said with a name like Kennedy, you'd think he'd be more popular. Let us roll to Woodbury, New Jersey. John, Mark Davis in for Hugh. Good Wednesday to you. Hi.
Hey, Mark. Great job as always. And I agree with you. And when you were first talking about the censorship, you know, I had the same thoughts. Yes, for the censorship, but then, you know, the wisdom part of, well, maybe not, but then getting back to the same thing. But even, I mean, isn't it even against the House rules to hold up all those stupid little signs and all that yes. Like petty, stupid stuff they do? It's like, you know,
it's disruptive. It is inherently disruptive, and I'd like to return to decorum on all sides. I don't want us doing it to them. I don't want them doing it to us. So I've probably fallen down on the side of censure to make a statement against that kind of thing, whether it's Al Green or, you know, heaven forbid, one of our guys in the future. Of course, that would involve a Democrat president, which I don't want to see for many, many years. Pennsylvania, William, Mark Davis in for Hugh. How are you?
Very good. I'm glad to speak to you, and I love your show.
Thanks so much.
Like I said before, the kindergarten kids made a real spectacle of their, you know, it's good they were in pink. You could pick them out real good.
That's it. That's it.
That was wonderful. But instead of, you know, making such a fuss over that, I would like to see Elon and Trump go after the money that was stolen, you know, the people that were...
And an interesting point about money, pardon my brevity, but unlike most State of the Unions, this was not Trump with his hands out to everybody for millions for Lord knows what. It was like, hey, here's what I've done. And it was not, for the most part, a laundry list of spending items. Awaiting our friend Mary Katherine Ham, who is setting herself up in and out wise in her house. One of the things I'm going to ask her about is something I'm going to ask you about as well. After it was over, I'm obviously watching some of the, you know, cable after analysis on Fox, on CNN, on MSNBC. And after such a triumphant night for Trump, I had to go see if they had black armbands on MSNBC. And I came into the middle of Nicole Wallace, and she was at least throwing what seemed to be grudging recognition of a magnificent moment that anybody with a human heart should appreciate. And that's Houston cancer survivor DJ Daniel. He wants to be a cop. We made him an honorary Secret Service agent. He's hugging the guy who just got accepted to West Point. What's not to love? And Nicole was throwing down, even on MSNBC, what seemed to be some evidence of humanity. But wait for it. Here's how it played out.
But I think this was a lesson in finding one thing that you let yourself feel. And I let myself feel joy about DJ. And I hope he's alive for another, 95 years, right? And I hope he lives and the life he wants to live. He wants to be a cop. He knows what he wants to do. And maybe when you have childhood cancer, that crystallizes for you. And I hope he has a long life as a law enforcement officer. But I hope he never has to defend the United States Capitol against Donald Trump supporters. And if he does, I hope he isn't one of the 6 who loses his life to suicide. And I hope he isn't one who has to testify against the people who carried out acts of seditious conspiracy and then live to see Donald Trump pardon those people.
Being speechless is not good in this line of work. I kind of am. I need help. Mary Katherine Ham is here. Hey, MK, how you doing?
Hi, how's it going?
Oh, it's going so well. I mean, it really, really is. And I'm not even going to let that bring me down. But let's spend a minute on it. I watched that. I wasn't even angry. I went beyond anger or sadness or frustration. And I got to a point where I just felt like I should pray for someone whose heart has grown so dark. That is a depravity that defies description. But what about you?
It's really a disturbed thought that she's having, right? I thought the same thing where I don't even really know how to react to this. If my friend said it, I'd be like, what are you talking about? Yes, psycho. But I wasn't on set with her, so I couldn't say that. I would have loved to have seen a wide shot of people reacting near her while she was doing this. Because I gotta believe even on an MSNBC set, they were like, ooh, this has gone down a very bad path. Look, it is not hard and should not be hard for anyone of any stripe to look at DJ getting his honorary Secret Service agent check box and hugging the head of the Secret Service and go, wow, that's very cool. His face lit up. It was so beautiful. Trump, even, I know they don't like him, but he has a talent for exactly this kind of moment, for exactly this kind of storytelling. And you know what? When it's someone as worthy as DJ and many of the people who were in the gallery last night, you just got to suck it up and cheer. That's what you have to do. You have to maintain your humanity long enough to be like, yes, Laken Riley's mom, we honor you and your sacrifice. Yes, DJ, we honor your fight. Like, do the normal thing, but they cannot.
No, that's exactly what they were tasked with. They knew what they were going to be up against. They knew they were walking into a buzzsaw. The best thing they could have done is to appear poised, sit there, kind of nod dismissively, whatever they wanted to do, and then go out and hold news conferences afterward, attacking anything they wanted to attack. But the list of things that Democrats could not bother themselves to stand for, the restroom issues, the keeping girls out of boys out of girls sports, the volleyball victim of that ball that came at her at 100 miles an hour, the bereaved relatives of Corey Comparator and others who were slaughtered by immigrant monsters. I mean, do they really want to reveal themselves? Who thought this was a good idea?
I mean, this is what happens, and I think you saw with Wallace, when everything is consumed by the idea that you have to react appropriately to trump the person, right? That's your most important value. You lose sight of all the other values. And that happens on the right too. Like, you can turn yourself off to Biden's presidency so much that you forget to evaluate, oh, who are these humans that he happens to be touting? Let's make sure that but like, Republicans last year at the State of the Union were perfectly fine. Like, they didn't refuse to escort the president in. They didn't do these shenanigans. In fact, Biden deserved to be excoriated because he had the father of one of the Marines who was murdered at Abbey Gate arrested that night because he had shouted Abbey Gate and United States Marines. That was what Biden was up to at the State of the Union last year. So, like, we all have our moments where we don't recognize the humanity of the person on the other side, but they got to do better than this. It is a bad look.
It's stunning, and it was surprising even to me. I've got a list going of what Trump hatred does. It makes funny people unfunny, Jimmy Kimmel. It makes smart people stupid, John Bolton, Bill Kristol. It makes nice people mean, some of your friends and family. It makes patriotic people unpatriotic, and now we have a new one. Trump hatred can rip the basic decency from your human heart. Do you think there are people who are learning the lesson today and saying, guys, we have to do, as you phrased it, we have to do better?
I think it's a possibility, but look, Alyssa Slotkin last night delivered the rebuttal. It's not an enviable position. It's a hard gig to do. You got to stand in a dark closet by yourself and give a speech after the president has just gone. Even if you're following Biden, that's a tough gig. However, she gives the speech and she tries to act medium normie, and I thought she did a pretty good job of seeming medium normie. The problem is she had just voted this week against the bill that would get boys out of women's sports. That's an 80-20 issue. Y'all aren't on the right side of it. So when you give us your medium normie representative and it turns out she's on the 20% side of a very basic issue, you're still running into problems because you're run by the people on the 20% side of a lot of issues.
Precisely right. I thought all day yesterday that maybe Fetterman would have been a genius Democrat response, and I think in many ways he would, but he was on the wrong side of that one as well. MK, can I hang on to you? I got one more thing I want to do. We started late. Can I grab one more brief segment with you at the end? Hang on a second. We'll come right back. We'll talk about that 5-4 decision out of the Supreme Court about what President Trump can or can't do with $2 billion of foreign aid. Mary Katherine Ham with us for just a couple more minutes, and thanks, MK. Give me a couple of minutes because you've been paying attention to that 5-4 decision where Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett go over essentially weighing in on what Trump can or can't do with putting pause on $2 billion of aid. What's your understanding of what that's about and what the ruling means and does not mean?
So it sounds like functionally it means that this money's probably going to go out the door pretty fast. Now, this is, in my understanding, money that goes to things that have already been performed, like services already rendered. Some of those services might be stupid, but some of those services have already been rendered, and this money is for them. This $2 billion, a district court said, nah, y'all can't pause this. And then it was appealed up to the Supreme Court to say, like, hey, can you guys address whether this money goes out the door, because the Trump administration's argument is, hey, once this goes out the door, we can't get it back. So that's like irreparable harm to us. So this temporary restraining order doesn't count. Alito got very upset about this decision, which was not on the merits. It's a procedural call, and it says, hey, y'all go back to the district court and figure this out, and the district court needs to give you clarification on what to do. Now, that kind of assumes that the District Court of D.C. is acting in good faith here, and I don't have faith that that's what's happening, although I have a lot of leeway for judges because I don't know all the laws. But, like, Alito was mad because he's like, how does a district court just have the right to say, nah, you got to throw this money out the window immediately when there's no way of recouping it? He says, go through the normal process, go through the appeals court, put a pause on this so that the irreparable harm is not done and you don't have to try to claw back this money. At any rate, to normal American people, it looks like, hey, can the executive please make decisions about what we spend money on? Like, once this money has been allocated and this thing is inside the executive branch, like, they have powers. It seems illogical that they do not.
So about 40 seconds for something we could do an hour on. This will add to a legacy of conservative disappointment, I think, in John Roberts and in Amy Coney Barrett. Is that fair or unfair?
I think it's too soon to tell. Look, I'm mad at Roberts still for the Obamacare decision. So
Me too.
I'm a little sensitive about these things. With Amy Coney Barrett, look, this is a procedural call. I guess it sort of depends what the district court decides and how it clarifies. But yeah, I get a little nervous. I gotta admit, because it happens to us a lot with justices we think are solid. But I'm not ready to declare anything at this point.
I think that is wise and measured. I would expect no less. Mary Katherine Ham, host of the Getting Hammered and Normally pods. Thank you so much, MK. It's always a pleasure. It's great to hear you driving around, getting up at a different time to do Hugh Hewitt when the sun is actually up. How awesome is that? Mary Katherine Ham, she's fantastic. At MK Hammer in the X world, in the Twitter world. I'm Mark Davis. I'm at Mark Davis in the Twitter world, the X world. And in just a little bit, we'll come back with hour number 2 and take a look at things Trump is doing that are of value around the world. How is the world different in Trump 2.0? I'm Mark Davis from 660 AM The Answer here in DFW. I do the Happy Morning Show here locally every morning, and this morning show was filled, I tell you, with reactions not just to the Trump speech, but also to reactions to the Trump speech. We've been sort of reacting to the reactions, one might say. But there's something about the Trump speech that made me want to hop off on some other directions and see what this still young Trump 2.0 means to the country, to our communities, to our culture, and to the world. So in preparing to fill in for Hugh, I go diving around through various things that I like to read, and I happened onto a piece in the American Conservative by James Pinkerton. It is called Trump Ushers in the Imagination Age. The subtitle, Improvisation is the name of the game these days in Washington, and it seems to be working. In reading the column, I could see what Mr. Pinkerton meant, but I figured we'd have him on and dig a little more deeply into what he meant. James Pinkerton, welcome, sir. Nice to have you.
Thanks for having me.
So I'm old enough to look at decades of foreign policy, and it tends to be very rigid, by rote. We gather 14 policy gatherings and issue 27 white pages. And now it's kind of a white knuckle, let's do this on the fly. And what is it about Trump? What is it about his rudder where he's able to somehow make it work?
Well, I think you put your finger on it. He never went to diplomacy school, right? He never went to any of these interagency meetings where they hammered out all the originality and freshness and innovation, and instead made his career in real estate and, every golf courses and everything else, and television. And so he just came at this from just sort of a new perspective, and he just didn't, frankly, have a lot of respect for sort of the accumulated conventional wisdom that had gotten us into, for example, the Iraq War.
So is it fair to say that some of these things that we revered, some of these things we put on a pedestal, some of these paths we used to follow for foreign policy decisions really did not maybe they deserved to be respected and even tolerated at some point, but it has just been time for a fresh eyes and a new approach for a really long time?
Well, as Secretary Rubio said in his confirmation hearing on January 15th, the rules-based international order, which the United States created in the 1940s after World War II and during the Cold War, this is Rubio talking now, has now become used against us. You know, there is, for example, countries can say we're friendly to the United States, so therefore we demand the right to send goods into the United States. And what we didn't realize was that meant that they would be sending in fentanyl through the U.S. mail. It's a clear cheat on the understanding of what international postal services were supposed to be about. You weren't supposed to be sending, deadly drugs through the mail. But that's just a tiny, not so tiny if you're a victim of fentanyl. It's just one of many examples of how, the other one, the big one being trade. I mean, the idea we'd have free trade with allies made a certain amount of sense. But then we discovered that not only were they dumping goods on the United States, they were also then turning around and using green regulations to stop American companies from expanding. And then they weren't paying for their own defense. And so we were getting the worst of all worlds. We were getting an open border, open trade zone, stuck with their green sort of native right regulations, and then on top of that, paying for all their defense so they could build their welfare states even bigger.
You mentioned in your piece in the American Conservative, one of the things I really wanted to ask about, because this seems like an idea plucked from somewhere, the notion of making Gaza livable and safe by having some type of American real estate footprint. Where'd that come from? Can it work? And what's your assessment of that now that it's baked in after about a month?
Well, it certainly has sunk in. I mean, I think the Israelis, and who can blame them, will never agree to a Gaza state, never, and who can blame them? And actually, the idea that I had that I'd written about in an ebook I published in December 2023 called "Create Gaza 2," I said the real thing to do is pay them to move, build an island somewhere, which we can do, or take an island. There's 600,000 islands around the world. We can find one for the Gazans, put them there, pay them to be there, and then evacuate Gaza, and then figure out what to do with it. Obviously, a lot of decontamination first, but nonetheless, it's a nice piece of real estate on the Mediterranean if someone other than Hamas were populating it. And so I was I can't say that President Trump has embraced the idea that I put forward and that I mentioned in that American Conservative piece, but he's getting there. And part of what, if you'll forgive me, triggered me to write that piece was that video that President Trump released, or shared, I should say, on February 27th. It's sort of a rock and roll MTV video of what Gaza could be, and it's all very, gold and Las Vegas-y, including a big giant gold statue of Trump. It's just the kind of playfulness and imagination. That's why I headlined the piece, "The Imagination Age," that is exactly what you'll never get out of the State Department.
And people see these things, and I can understand, especially folks who have been on the planet for a while, especially folks who are steeped in policy, seeing things like this, hearing things like this, and thinking, this just seems crazy. How can this work? To which I would say, what has worked so far? A bunch of old, dusty, crusty people looking at it for decades has not achieved significant and satisfactory results. So why not try something new? For a last thing, speaking of acquiring an island, help me understand the annexation of Greenland.
Well, there's another one. I've written a great deal about that as well. I mean, I think Greenland is 1/4 the size of the continental United States. It has a population of 65,000. I mean, it's the most radically underpopulated place in the world, this side of Antarctica. And it has many tens of trillions of natural resources, but it's sort of controlled by a weird amalgam of the Inuit Eskimo tribe and the Danes. And between them, they're completely green, completely anti-growth, completely anti-everything. And they have, therefore, a giant glacier for a country. And they could all be millionaires and billionaires on digging up rare earths and oil and everything else that's everywhere else under the earth. And they've somehow chosen not to do that. And again, I think Trump or just any sort of American capitalist would say, listen, I'll write everybody here in Greenland a check for $1 million. just to get started. That would be $55 billion, which is peanuts compared to the probably 20 or 30 trillion that the Greenland is worth. And then now let us have at it and let us start, making, refining yttrium and sandalum and all these other rare earths instead of getting them from China like we have been so far.
Absolutely. Every time somebody asks why, I'm tempted to ask why not. James Pinkerton, writing in the American Conservative. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your insights. Great to have you on the program.
Thank you.
Let me take a moment with you folks, talk a little bit about our friends at ALEC, great acronym, American Legislative Exchange Council. Republican-led states embrace the DOGE, return to the office, get back to the office, move for government workers. Jonathan Williams, an economist, ALEC's president, said for nearly 5 years, many state governments have been paying for maintenance on office buildings that have remained largely empty. That is taxpayer money flying right out the window. Give state-level DOGE efforts a significant area to investigate. So several states are considering legislation to reduce agency overreach based on the ALEC model policy, the Targeted Legislative Review Act. Missouri is doing it. Nebraska is doing it. Their bill requires any rule or regulation projected to have an economic impact of $1 million or 5 years to undergo a regulatory impact analysis before it can take effect. Look at that. It also mandates that agencies submit cost-benefit analyses and job impact projections. To learn more about great ideas like this, what's happening in your state and others, and to watch federalism in action, sign up for the free weekly newsletter, that ALEC puts at ALEC, A-L-E-C, ALEC.org/Hugh. That is ALEC, A-L-E-C, ALEC.org/Hugh. They are good people. They are smart people. They deserve to be listened to. Hey, you folks deserve to be listened to as well. 1-800-520-1234. Gathering thoughts on how did last night grab you? Also, your reactions to the reactions in Democrat land and elsewhere. Let's go to California. Let's say hi to John Campbell, who served 10 years in Congress in that great state, has all kinds of great ideas, all kinds of things going on from his experience. I'm just asking everybody what they thought of last night in a broad sense, and then we'll talk some economic things. John, pleasure to welcome you. How'd the speech grab you, if I may ask?
Hey, Mark, you may, and I will answer that, but I have to say a couple of things before that. First, I did represent California in Congress and in the state legislature for 14 years. But I'm currently in Arizona because I left the state of California, as many friends call it, about 8-9 years ago. And now I'm in a red state with a blue governor, a few states over from you in Arizona. So that is where I'm talking to you from today, and Excellent. It is good to see you. It is good to see you, which it used to be we did radio, and that was just a manner of, it was an expression. You didn't actually see the person, but now because of Salem TV network, I actually do see you. So that is excellent. And then the third thing I have to say before I actually answer your question, which shows you what a terrible guest I am, but you learn this in Congress, how to not answer the question which is asked, but is to say I'm so pleased to hear you're a music guy. I'm a music guy too. Love the Moody Blues. I have not all, but most of their albums on vinyl, which I bought in the day, and I have a full turntable set up here, and I have over 1,000 pieces of vinyl, all of which I bought back in the day. And many friends of mine who, I don't have a record player anymore, I can't play this. I didn't have to buy all that. They gave it to me over the years. So it's great. But anyway, on to the speech last night, which I watched every minute of those 2 hours of that speech. It was rather long, I have to say that. The fact that he eclipsed Bill Clinton is not necessarily something to be proud of. That said, it was outstanding. It was excellent. I think it was probably his best speech ever. And certainly the polling and everything else we see it reinforces that view that it was a good speech. It was well delivered. It hit on all the points. And I think one of the main things it did is it hit on so many 80-20, 70-30 points where the Republicans and President Trump is on the 80-70% side. But what I'd like to comment on briefly and then take any questions you have. I was in that room, not last night, but when I was there, Obama, he did a couple of special addresses that weren't the State of the Union, or they weren't in February or March. So I was probably in the room for 10 or 11 of those things where the president came in and spoke. And, you know, and most of those, Obama was the president and he was the speaker. And obviously I was not a fan of President Obama and much of what he did. But if he would stand up there and say, you know what, and we're doing a mission here because we want to cure childhood cancer, you didn't sit on your hands.
No.
Because that was basically saying, well, I don't want to cure childhood cancer, so I'm going to sit down because I don't want to do that. No, you stood up for that stuff. You may not have liked the person saying it. You may not have liked the speech overall, but there was a point when the president you disagreed with, and this was true on both sides of the aisle back then, but certainly when Obama was president and I was a Republican sitting there, he would say something that you agreed with. You know, I'd often look to the person next to me and say, well, we got to stand up for that.
Absolutely.
And part of it is, A, you agreed with it. And the second thing is, you didn't want a picture of you sitting down with your hands folded in your lap when they said, we're going to cure childhood cancer. That is not a good look. And from a purely, self-preservation standpoint, I know earlier in the last hour, I actually, by the way, listen to the show. I don't just go on it and be a guest on it. But you were talking about people being more, I think you and Mary Katherine Ham were talking about being more human and why weren't the Democrats? Forget that. Assume they're robots. Assume they have no humanistic morals whatsoever. For the purpose of self-preservation, for the purpose of being reelected, for the purpose of not giving your next opponent on a silver platter an issue to hit you with, do not sit down when someone says we're going to increase penalties for people who kill cops. This is, 80-20, what is that, a 90-10?
No, 100%. 100. In fact, the list grows. The things that Democrats refuse to clap for, the capturing of the ISIS terrorist that masterminded Abbey Gate, DJ Daniel fighting brain cancer, Americans joining the military in record numbers, taking down illegal revenge porn, the return of American hostage Mark Fogel, a student getting accepted to West Point. These are things that they could not find the human decency to applaud. Why? Because Trump was saying them. How low have we fallen?
Well, yeah, and that's why I said this is a new low, certainly in my lifetime and certainly in my experience, where you had nobody, where they didn't stand up for that sort of thing. And as I say, it's not just human decency, it's they're ignoring self-preservation. Either that, or they actually think it's popular to do this. But what I see here is a new epidemic in America, which I'm not sure that RFK Jr. can deal with this epidemic through his department. But it's TDS. It's Trump derangement syndrome. That's what this is. One of the things I wondered is, what if one of the opponents to Donald Trump in the last primary in 2024 had won and had delivered these same issues in a speech? If had it been Ron DeSantis, had it been Doug Burgum, had it been, any Marco Rubio, he didn't run last time, but a time before, any of the people that Trump beat either in 2024, 2020, or 2016 said the same things, would the Democrats have sat on their hands? I'm suspecting they would not, and that, which means that this is TDS, this is Trump derangement syndrome, and if it is so deep within these people that they truly believe it, and I actually wrote about this not that long ago, that if Trump cured cancer, they would say he was putting doctors and nurses out of work.
Exactly.
And that was a terrible, awful, terrible thing that he did. He was destroying jobs in the economy by curing cancer. And but it really is TDS. And I don't know what you do about that. I don't know how you cure
I don't think I want to do it. It's up to them. I don't want to do anything because their affliction is helping us, just as this has. Mr. Campbell, thank you so much for your kind words, for being there. California, transplanted to Arizona, work on the blue parts of Arizona. It is so nice to have you. Thank you, sir.
It's great to be with you,
John
Mark.
Campbell. The greatness of John Campbell. So, all right. Let me give that to you. 1-800-520-1234. 1-800-520-1234. If it were a President DeSantis, a President Doug Burgum, delivering this same agenda, would it be as reviled by the left? Are they coming after the ideas because they hate conservative ideas that work, or is it all about him? We'd like to ask you guys something as we get ready to take some calls. 1-800-520-1234. We'd like you to place a call or just hop onto HughHewitt.com and do a little something for our friends at Food for the Poor. This is a magnificent faith-based organization. I've gone with them to Haiti, to Guatemala, to places in Latin America and the Caribbean. I've seen the miracles that they are capable of. People say, man, when you go to see that gut-wrenching poverty, isn't it really depressing? Well, on the way from the airport to the mountains outside Guatemala City, or from downtown Port-au-Prince out into some moonscape where Food for the Poor has been doing a feeding center, yeah, it can get a little overwhelming. But then you realize what you are doing. You realize what we are able to do in partnership with you and in partnership with Food for the Poor. We're able to do amazing things, putting food in the bellies of starving children, bringing water projects to places that don't even have running water. And this is not some USAID federal bureaucracy, Ponzi scheme. No. Food for the Poor is trustworthy. They are great. I've known them for years. Here's what I want you to do. Go to HughHewitt.com, click the Feed Their Future banner. HughHewitt.com, click Feed Their Future. And a $100 one-time gift provides life-altering nutrition for an entire year for a child. So if you're driving or just not online, text Hewitt to 51555. That works too. Text Hewitt to 51555. Or give them a call, 855-359-4673, 855-359-4673. But most folks just go to HughHewitt.com and click Feed Their Future. Thank you so much for doing so. I thank you. Hugh thanks you. Food for the Poor thanks you. You know who really thanks you? The mother of a child who is eating today, because you showed this kind of kindness. HughHewitt.com, click Feed Their Future. All right, let's go to Arizona. Greg, Mark Davison for you. Thanks for hanging on. How you doing this Wednesday? Oh, hang on a second.
Hi, Mark. How are you today?
Doing great. Thank you.
Mark, in 1984, when Reagan poleaxed Mondale, I don't remember any of this thing happening in his next 4 State of the Union addresses. Should Mr. Green be sanctioned? Yes, he should be. Now, does that gentleman who interrupted Obama, should he be sanctioned in your opinion?
He was reprimanded, and I was okay with that. And a lot of my audience didn't like me for saying this. But when Joe Wilson yelled, "You lie," at Obama, the answer was, "But he did lie." And I said, "I know he lied." The place to say that is after the speech rather than interrupting the speech. I will always feel that way about interruptions on both sides. We're in Hollywood, California. Bob, Mark Davison for Hugh. Good Wednesday to you. How you doing?
Can you hear me all right?
I can. You bet. You bet.
I agree with you. I think that those sort of behavior, we don't need that from Republicans or Democrats, especially. What I called in was the problem, I think one of the major problems, of course, is the national debt. And Milton Friedman, the economist, says in order to get that down, we have to lower taxes and cut spending.
That's it.
Now, President Trump says that he will not touch Medicare or Social Security. Most of our money is going towards the entitlement programs, in particularly Medicare and Social Security. They need to be reformed. There's no way out of it. That's my opinion.
I think you're right. What we have to do is honor the commitment we've made to people, because Social Security is not an entitlement. It is my money or your money that you've placed in there with that bargain with the government, thank you, FDR, that said we're going to give you your money back. Might there be means testing? I hope not. Might there be an advancement in the retirement age? Maybe that's workable since we're all living longer. But I don't know if you balance the budget without some type of reform or maybe a search for waste and fraud in those budget line items as well. I'm on a quest to talk to this man in as many day parts, on as many different shows, and my own show, filling in for other people, as possible, because when I do, it's always fantastic. It's Steve Moore, founder, Club for Growth, Wall Street Journal, Heritage, he's everywhere, author of Trumponomics, The Trump Economic Miracle. Steve Moore, great to have you. How you doing, sir?
Good to see you. I can't stop smiling after that speech last night that the president gave. So very, 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 very good mood today.
I can only imagine. And some of the basics that we all understand, the lower taxes, the better economic policies, the better climate policies. I want you to help me, just work with me, because I think this is what some in the audience need. Help me with the tariffs. What's the best answer to people who say that tariffs are going to make things more expensive, which is not going to go over well with some people when we're trying to bring inflation down?
Well, Mark, do you want the good news or the bad news? Maybe, I mean, look, you and I have known each other for a long, long time. You know that I'm, instinctively a free trader. When I was young in my career, I was fortunate enough to know Milton Friedman, one of the greatest economists who ever lived. And of course, he was a big free trader. And look, we know that free trade is the way to prosperity. But what Trump has done is put a new wrinkle in this. And what Trump is doing is saying, listen, we can negotiate better trade deals where we can force countries to do things that are in our interest as a nation, whether it's keeping out drugs, whether it's other countries paying their NATO dues, whether it's securing our border. And so I think Trump may prevail here in terms of forcing countries to do things that are in America's interest. Look, we're the freest trade country in the world. We have the lowest tariffs of any country, Mark.
So when we take a look at these things, and I understand what he's trying to do, he's trying to compel countries to behave in certain ways, and it's already working. They're the Honda people are going to build a CRV plant. They're not going to build it in Mexico. They're going to build it in Indiana. That's billions of dollars. It's American jobs. This is why the tariffs are there. What's the best response? Kind of my common theme. Best response to people who go, oh, it'll start a trade war.
So I've been around Donald Trump now for 8 or 9 years. I've come to incredibly respect him, as almost all of your listeners have. I don't always agree with Donald Trump. In fact, it's funny, Mark, whenever I see him, he said, there's Steve Moore, he's a great economist, but he doesn't always agree with me on my tariffs. And I laugh and I say, well, that's true, Mr. President. I love your tax policies and your energy policies and, what you've done in terms of deregulating the economy. He's a great businessman. But even on tariffs, I think what he's doing is using America's economic power and our leverage over other countries. I've always said, Mark, if you want to understand Donald Trump, you have to read his book, The Art of the Deal, because he is the single greatest negotiator I have ever met in my life. And I think at the end of the day, he's going to force these other countries to lower their tariffs on American products so we can have more production and more jobs here. The other thing he wants to do that I find interesting is that he wants to lower the tax rate to 15% if things are made in America. And I love that idea. I think that'll bring a lot of jobs back to Cleveland, to Toledo, to Bakersfield, California, and Illinois. So I think that's a great idea.
I think there's also a tax policy idea where interest on car payments would be deductible if it's an American car. All these things are incentives to do things that benefit the country. Last thing for right now. Let's spend a little moment on what somebody asked me in a prior segment about entitlements. Is it possible to balance the budget? Can entitlements be that legendary third rail? Touch it and you die. Are there some reforms that won't make people take to the streets with flaming pitchforks?
Well, the two big entitlements, of course, are Social Security and Medicare. And by the way, Mark, just last week I turned 65. So I am now technically eligible for Medicare and Social Security.
Happy birthday.
Now, I think everyone knows the solution to the Social Security issue. We have to immediately let every young person in America put their money into a 401k type of plan, or at least have the option of doing that and getting their money out of the black hole of Social Security. I checked how much money, if I were to retire this year, how much I would get out of Social Security. I'd get a lousy benefit of $3,250 a month. If I could have put that money into a 401k plan and just invested it in an index fund of all the stocks, how big my monthly benefit would be, Mark? $11,000. Social Security is a big for young people, and they've got to be able to put their money into a fund. In terms of Medicare, I think what we ought to do is basically say, look, if you're Bill Gates or Warren Buffett, you probably don't need Medicare. You probably can pay for your own health care. And let's make sure that Medicare is people who really can't afford private health insurance.
On Twitter, at Stephen Moore, STEPHEN. Always great to have you, Steve. Thank you so much. And late happy birthday from all of us at Salem. Thanks so much for being here. The great Stephen Moore.
Thanks, Mark. It's
great to be with you. Hey, speaking of costs and bringing the cost of things down, let me tell you about Conservatives for Lower Health Care Cost. pharmawindfall.com. With President Trump making all kinds of strides in this first month in office to deliver on campaign promises to make America great again, it is clear this administration is committed to driving down costs, unleashing prosperity across the country. Big Pharma, in some ways, stands in the way. They raised prices on over 575 brand name drugs in January alone. They tend to block competition. They spend millions pushing overpriced meds on hardworking Americans. Now, they're pressing Congress to implement mandates that will undermine the one real check against drug companies and ban the market-based incentives that help employers and families save on prescriptions. Big Pharma wants to strip American employers of the freedom to choose health benefits that work best for them. This could hand Big Pharma a $32 billion with a B dollar money grab. Conservatives for lower health care costs warned you, Big Pharma, not on our side on this. They fought against solutions to lower drug prices during Trump's first term, opposed RFK Jr., so I want to send you to pharmawindfall.com, P-H-A-R-M-A, pharmawindfall.com, to demand fair health care practices, protect the private market, and fight the greed of Big Pharma. Congress can put a stop to this, and you can make a difference. Let's fight back. pharmawindfall.com. Visit it today. Hey, thanks for visiting us. You can visit us on the phone at 1-800-520-1234, 1-800-520-1234.
Finally, we have some bumper music on this show.
So here's what I do. I bring in a whole list of chart history, musical birthdays, my personal agenda. I leave a little bit of latitude, and I get goosified. And properly so. And every once in a while, you need a jam band from Connecticut.
Yes, you do.
Just to keep you happy. Dwayne is here. It's been a little while since we spoke. We have never spoken. We've spoken in the daylight, but, only once the sun came up. You were never in the daylight in California for the most part.
No, about this time, I'm usually in a coffin.
Exactly. They have shed the vampire hours in the Hugh Hewitt operation. It's great to be here at this time. Great to see you, Dwayne. And the first thing I would say is you seem to have continued to keep the weight off, my friend. How have you done that?
And it was a little challenging, actually, for the first few weeks trying to adapt to a new schedule. You were kind of used to eating at certain times.
Yep.
And now everything completely got changed around. So I actually went back to my PhDweightloss.com, talked to my counselor, Rachel, and we kind of came up with a new meal plan to kind of get back on the beam the way I needed to get back on it.
Fantastic. So here we are as winter's getting ready to turn to spring, and we've all been like hibernating like bears and probably eating like bears. And if you're ready to get into spring shape and summer shape, PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition at 864-644-1900. And they don't do pills and they don't do injections. You can do, but I want to do my own food. They even include 80% of your food. If you want it, you can mix it and match it however you want. Find them online at myphdweightloss.com, myphdweightloss.com. Tell them you heard about it on the Hugh Hewitt Show, and just take a look at Dwayne. Evidence that it absolutely works. Speaking of things that are working well, man, when you called me and you graciously put me into this day, I just need to thank you for that, because you do Monday and Friday. Colonel Kurt did yesterday. Ed Morrissey tomorrow. It's always, when Hugh is gone, we always miss him, but it's great to be here. Great to hear you. What a day we're having. What did you see? Where were your
the day after that speech is the sweet spot. You really have you've got the crown jewel of the week.
I'm enormously pleased, and so when Hugh comes back after you do the Friday show and Hugh returns, what do you think the rest of March looks like? How do Democrats rebound from this if they can? What's the best way, the best agenda path forward?
Well, I think if you're a Democrat, your best agenda right now is to keep trying to dismantle the progress forward on the big, beautiful bill that's going to be coming. I mean, that's really your best angle, is just to try to derail it any way possible.
I think it makes sense, and they can try, and one wonders if their attempts will be as ham-handed and inept as everything else they've done. So I tell you what, let's do. Let's give everybody the way to get on in here. 1-800-520-1234. 1-800-520-1234. We have some guest action coming up in the next hour, but mostly it's you and me. Your thoughts on last night, reactions to last night, and where we are as we enjoy the beginning of the month of March. Mark Davis in for you. 1-800-520-1234. 5th day of March 2025. Mark Davis filling in for you. I'm the happy morning host at 6:60 a.m., The Answer in Dallas-Fort Worth. And in the time that I've, almost 13 years coming into the world of Salem, hosting the local show, doing national radio, doing Salem News Channel, just all the above. It's a pleasure to be with you on whatever platform and in whatever way. So with you in this new time frame, it means that things actually happen during the day and we get to comment on them as they do. This is just such a time. Obviously, if you're just joining us, we're doing a lot of reaction to the Trump speech last night and a lot of reaction to the reaction, noticing how people are throwing conniption fits and having 6 heart attacks and 14 nervous breakdowns in what I like to call clarity phobia. There are some things that are being made clear, and some folks just don't like it. So I've got a lot of, my personal thoughts about this, and I'm mixing and matching with yours at 1-800-520-1234. Going to go to your calls here in just a moment, 1-800-520-1234. Follow me on Twitter. Shoot me anything there through that realm, at Mark Davis, M-A-R-K Davis. Much appreciate you. But we have some news today. So one wonders, if you're Donald Trump, how do you spend the day after just such a speech? One might think you would decompress over a round of golf. One would be wrong. He's right back at work doing more things that are important to him and thus important to the country. President Trump has met with some of these hostages who have managed to be released from the monsters who held them captive post-October 7th. And there is a post that he has made just within the last few minutes that I want to share with you. It reads as follows. Shalom Hamas means hello and goodbye. You can choose. Release all of the hostages now, not later, and immediately return all of the dead bodies of the people you murdered, or it is over for you. Only sick and twisted people keep bodies, and you are sick and twisted. I am sending Israel everything it needs to finish the job. Not a single Hamas member will be safe if you don't do as I say. I have just met with your former hostages whose lives you have destroyed. This is your last warning. For the leadership, now is the time to leave Gaza while you still have a chance. Also, to the people of Gaza, a beautiful future awaits, but not if you hold hostages. If you do, you are dead. Make a smart decision. Then, all caps, release the hostages now, or there will be hell to pay later. He then signs it, as if he has to, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America. So, what happens now? We can add that to the topical layers and plenty to talk about on this Wednesday. 1-800-520-1234. 1-800-520-1234. We are in Columbus, Ohio, where I believe we have to go at least once during a show hosted by Hugh Hewitt. John, hi. Welcome. Mark Davison for you. Good Wednesday to you.
Mark, first of all, it's a pleasure to even be able to speak to you. I missed you since Hugh went to the afternoon, so really a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
So I guess if you want to hear my point of view, former soldier, 86 to 92, had the pleasure of serving under the Commander-in-Chief, Ronald Reagan, and then on to Bush. The biggest thing I'll state is it's a pleasure to see a Commander-in-Chief like President Trump doing what he's doing, number one. Number two, I'm a businessman now, and I'll tell you, everything he's doing is exactly what I would do in business. So he's handling our country properly. And I'll say this about last night. I was in tears I don't know how many times. I mean, just watching some of the lives that have been destroyed due to all the different things, and watching President Trump and his cabinet step in the way they are, trying to make things right, and actually making things right. Man, I'm on a high right now. I'm grateful to God Almighty for putting this man in, and first to battle, second to none, Mark.
Precisely right. John, if I can ask, generally what kind of business do you have, and how does the whole tariffs idea strike you, and how might it affect you?
First of all, I'm in fintech, financial technology, been doing it for going on 3 decades now. It's just good business. And especially when he said, we're going to reciprocate whatever is put on us, we're going to reciprocate it back. That's solid business. Yes, it causes a short duration of pain, and I would guesstimate for the United States anywhere from 3 to 6 months, because in the background, Trump is also trying to drill, baby, drill. So we're going to see some things start to subside, which will ease up. We'll see other things start to tighten up a little, but he's also talking about how he's making our farmers more capable of doing their job. I just see this as a good thing. We'll tighten our belts in some areas, but doggone it, we've been tightening our belts now for the past 4 years in a way that was just going so far south that we had no hope, it seems. So again, we're moving tremendously at the speed of light in the right direction.
John, thank you for your service, first of all, and your call. I so appreciate you and appreciate your kind words, too. Let's go to Auburn Hills, Michigan. Tony, Mark Davis in for Hugh. How are you doing? Welcome, sir.
How you doing, sir? Yeah, it's Tommy.
Good, thank you.
Hey, you know what? Oh, my God. I just got to say, God bless Donald Trump. And for everybody out there that saw that speech, and you know what? Just take a second and imagine what would this country look like if Kamala Harris on November 5th was declared the winner.
I know.
I can't even, you know what? Oh, my God. What this country would look like. You know what I mean? It's like we have to thank our lucky stars for the man, Donald Trump. You know what? Oh, my God. You know what? This country would be over if she had won somehow.
Sir, you've given voice to something that I've thought a part of every day, and thank you enormously. I do it several times a day. And one of the times that really took root for me was before the speech even began. Before you even get the sergeant at arms, Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States, and everybody goes nuts. That was fantastic. But before we even got to that, Supreme Court folks come in. We like some of those. We don't like others. Some it depends on the day. And then the cabinet comes in. And there's Pete Hegseth, which is American flag pocket square. He's Secretary of Defense. And there's Kristi Noem, a wonderful governor of South Dakota. She's running Homeland Security. There's Pam Bondi, who's an awesome Attorney General. There is Marco Rubio, who I've never loved more, and I was as 50-50 on Marco Rubio as most of y'all were some years back, but guess what? People get better. They get better, and boy, has he. He may go down as one of the most important secretaries of state in my lifetime. And I'm looking at all, smart people, patriotic people, wise people, principled people, truth-telling, honest, transparent people. And they are in positions of power because he won. Because he won. And I do this, and I say it like 3 times, not like clicking my heels together, but I do it on my local show. And I thank God he won, thank God he won, thank God he won. I'm sitting here right now, talking to you right now, doing this right now. It's easy to think, what would these talk shows be like? What kind of shows would Hugh Hewitt be doing? What kind of shows would I be doing? What kind of shows would Chris DeGaulle, Mike Gallagher, we'd be talking you all off the ledge. We'd still be here for a while, one presumes. But it would be, oh, God in heaven, protect us, guide us, save us in some way. I mean, there's no way to be saved. You know what I mean? Rescued from the phenomenon, if indeed the phenomenon had taken hold, if she had won, if she and Dougie were the first couple. And as much as that chills me to the bone to think about it, we would have not sanity, but insanity on our border and in matters of gender. Not lower taxes, but higher. Not a strong face to the world, but a weak face to the world. And as jarring as it is to think about that, you then lift your head up and you say, yeah, but wait, she didn't win. He did. Our futures are brighter. The country is back. And evidence of it was everywhere last night. Thank God he won. Thank God he won. Thank God he won. I have to tell you, this 29-year-old Timothy Chalamet, who spent, a lot of his 20s diving in with such precision and respect and deference to an artist who, decades older than he is. They've never met. Dylan ought to make a beeline to Timothy Chalamet and say, hey, thank you, or however he would phrase it, because the movie's apparently remarkable. I think Hugh saw it and liked it. I need to make my way to that. You need to make your way to HughHewitt.com, HughHewitt.com, please. And I want to thank those of you who have already stepped up in just these first early days this week to help Hugh's campaign for Food for the Poor. Food for the Poor, my great friends, I've been to Haiti with them. I've been to Guatemala with them, a Christian nonprofit international relief organization. They are remarkable. They're focusing, among other places, like El Salvador, skyrocketing food prices, limited job opportunities, a little bit of government corruption. That's never helpful. It is really hard for Salvadoran kids under 5 facing hunger, anemia. The only opportunity they have for a healthy life is through lunches they get at school. We are helping with school lunch programs in El Salvador. Whatever you can will make a difference. I'm going to tell you how to give, but let you hear from a young lady who has already given. This is Sarah.
I just wanted to say I really admire your work with Food for the Poor each year. And I'm 16 years old. I live at home, so I don't really make a whole lot of money. But I have an envelope that I keep on my nightstand, and each time I do get some money, I put a little bit away throughout the year, maybe like $1 or $2, and it's for Food for the Poor. And so this year I saved up $80 to give, and I'm not saying any of this to brag. I just wanted to encourage your listeners who probably make more money than I do. And so if you can just spare a little bit, that would be good. Bye.
That would be good, Sarah says. And she is quite the master of understatement. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much. Your 80, means 800 or 8,000 to some of us. So what a sacrifice from this young lady. Let's talk about a round number. A $100 one-time gift, just one time, $100, provides life-giving nutrition for an entire year for a child. So can we send you to HughHewitt.com? Click the Feed Their Future banner. Feed Their Future at HughHewitt.com. Or on the phone, 855-359-4673. 855-359-4673. Or via text the word Hewitt, Hewitt, Hewitt to 51555. We'll send you back a link, and you can give whatever you can. You know the old saying, give till it helps, and every little bit does. Thank you so much. I thank you. Hugh thanks you. Food for the Poor thanks you. You know who really thanks you? A child who will eat today because you cared. A mother with 3 children. How'd you like to have that choice? Well, I got enough food to feed one of y'all. Do I spread it thinly among all 3? Do you draw straws for who's the lucky kid? Let's not have this happen. You can make it better. So thanks for doing so. HughHewitt.com, HughHewitt.com. Feed Their Future. Okay, folks are filling, as we're filling bellies in Latin America and the Caribbean, folks are filling our phone lines. Let's go to Nashville. Mark Davis in for Hugh. Pleasure to have you. Good Wednesday to you, sir.
Happy Wednesday, Mark. I'm a big fan, and I love the speech last night. I have a minor issue with you and President Trump.
Ready.
They talk about the female volleyball player who was hit in the face and she had brain damage or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I find it strange because I've been hit in the face several times. They call it six-packed in volleyball slang. And the spikes can go 120 miles an hour. Let me tell you, it stings. But I can't imagine why a female would absorb a spike in a different way than a male would. You see what I'm saying?
I do, and I've got a lot of volleyball in my world. And my producer here in DFW, Rhonda Moreland, is a volleyball mom for the ages, known a lot of our friends' families, blah, blah, blah. Will you take a ball in the face if you are in girls' volleyball? Yes, you will. The sheer speed and ferocity with which it hits you It's possible to get your nose broken by a really big girl on the other side. Absolutely true. But like various other types of competition, when it is a man, when it is a boy, the imbalance in speed, strength, the matchups is what makes it additionally unfair. It increases the likelihood of injury. It doesn't mean that nobody's ever going to get hurt if there's nothing but girls on the team. You're right about that. But throw in men, throw in boys, and the likelihood of injury grows, and that's simply not fair, simply unacceptable.
I understand. We had co-ed playing, and I played collegiate volleyball, and I never heard of a male taking a hard spike and having anything more, not even a concussion.
Understand. And by the way, co-ed volleyball is awesome. If you're hanging with friends at the beach, that's great. But when it's time for athletics, there's a reason why there's men's teams and women's teams. There's a reason why those exist. And I really feel like the pendulum is swinging after, sometimes the toothpaste can be put in the tube. Sometimes the horse can be returned to the barn, the sanity horse inside the sanity barn. And I think we're starting to win on these. And like so many other issues, this isn't just hooray conservatives, hooray Trump, hooray talk show guys. The ladies wore pink. The ladies wore pink in protest against something one presumes last night at the Trump speech. They dared to wear pink while steadfastly standing against the safety and fair competition of women in sports. That takes a special level of nerve. We're in Michigan. Tim, Mark Davis in for you. Good Wednesday to you. How you doing?
I'm doing well.
Hi.
I think that it wouldn't have mattered who brought that speech. I think they've got more of an issue with Trump than they would with others. But I think there should be a new syndrome. It should be multiple personality derangement syndromes, because they would have a fit no matter what part of the cabinet spoke. They have issues about everything from everybody that Trump has nominated.
I think you're right, and this is a product of an earlier question of what makes them so additionally crazy. Is it that the ideas are so effective and the reforms are so real and the change is so present that the left is just freaking out? Or is it Trump? Is it something about him? I think the answer is both. And if we could, go back in time and have it be a President DeSantis or a President Burgum or a President whomever delivering us the very same agenda, but have it not be Trump, would the Democrats be a little less crazy, a little less venomous? Maybe a little, because I think the answer really is both. Because, of course, it's the success of his policies that inflames them the most. But the way he uniquely comes after them, the effectiveness, the sheer joy with which he, with gusto, achieves all these things, I think that makes him crazier still. And what I really, really love her work, Sarah Bedford, investigations editor for the Washington Examiner. Sarah, welcome. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
It is wonderful to have you. Before I talk about anything that you have been writing or tweeting, I always look at what people are doing. I always like to get a jump on things in the investigations world and the repertorial world of the Examiner. Morning after the speech, what are you working on today? What's the next thing we will see you write?
Well, obviously, the Examiner, we've been covering a lot about the reaction to the speech, the fallout to the speech. But in terms of what the investigations team is doing, we've been looking at a lot of these NGOs and nonprofits that have been getting so much money from USAID that Doge has been exposing. And in particular, all of the connections between these NGOs and some of the prominent members and donors of the Democratic Party. There's just a whole web of spending taxpayer dollars on left-wing causes that I don't think people had a great understanding of before Elon Musk came along.
So can't wait to see the work you guys do on that. You cast attention on something. Your colleague Ashley Oliver did the piece about how Illinois is in court right now, arguing that its sanctuary state law should outweigh the federal government's immigration enforcement effort. And you properly put, that's after Democrats were just enormously cheerful that the Biden DOJ sued my state of Texas over the Fed's exclusive authority on immigration. So their selective federal versus states attention is interesting when it comes to immigration.
Oh, yeah, it's hard to find a cleaner example of Democratic hypocrisy, for lack of a better word, on federal authority and state authority when it comes to immigration than the case studies of Texas and what's happening now with Illinois and also New York. The Trump DOJ, led by Attorney General Pam Bondi, brought a lawsuit against Illinois saying your state law does not preempt federal immigration authorities' ability to enforce immigration law in Illinois. And Illinois is trying to say, well, we have a state law on the books that says local authorities don't need to cooperate with federal authorities, and that Illinois state law is more important and supersedes the federal law. That's not what Democrats said when Texas, under the Biden administration, said, you know what, if the Biden administration, if the federal government is not going to enforce immigration laws here at our border, then we're going to pass a state law that gives us more resources to enforce immigration. Texas did that, and the Biden DOJ sued Texas and said that, you know, the federal government has exclusive authority over immigration enforcement, and fought that all the way up through the courts, didn't quite reach the Supreme Court, but now Democrats seeing a completely different tune about whether states can take immigration matters in their own hands.
There's apparently something you like to do that I like to do too. That's finding things that people have posted that you really agree with and put that up and say, hey, here's this. And then finding people who might not agree with us and seeing if maybe they've kind of made a point for us. Over at the Bulwark, home of Trump-hating weasels, Sam Stein says, hey, look at this, everybody. More than 700 current U.S. foreign policy officers, 700 of them, have signed a cable in dissent to Marco Rubio saying, stop the dismantling of USAID. It's extraordinary. It's 700 current U.S. foreign policy officers. Please share with everybody the observation you have made about that.
Well, I think it's just so interesting because what you hear from Democrats and people who are really opposing Donald Trump's efforts to cut the government and to fire a bunch of federal officials is that these are just career civil servants. They don't have any partisan leanings. They're just there for their expertise. I think this is kind of a great example of where that argument falls apart. There are a lot of people in Washington who are in significant policy-making roles who are not nonpartisan, and yet they enjoy the same protections as the civil servants envisioned by the civil servant laws. They are in positions to obstruct the Trump administration's agenda. We saw that happen during the first Trump presidency. And so you can't look at these, in some cases, high-ranking career diplomats in the State Department who are saying, we publicly are going to disagree and oppose the Trump administration's policy shift away from prioritizing foreign aid, and think that that is sort of an example of nonpartisanship in government. This is why Donald Trump is doing what he's doing.
Always great to have you. The great Sarah Bedford at Sarah C. Bedford on the old Twitter X, investigations editor for DC Examiner. Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate it. And the reason I was just tickled by that, Sam Stein just wetting himself. Like 700 U.S. foreign policy officers saying thus and such to Rubio. That's like the 50-some intelligence officers and the lies they told about Russia. It's almost as if there's a swamp. It's almost as if there's a deep state. One could think that, couldn't one? That Mick Jagger guy put out a solo album called She's the Boss. This is Half a Loaf from the Mixter. He looked great at the Oscars. I DVR'd the Oscars so I could watch that interminable 3-hour show in about 45 minutes. And I was glad to see Kieran Culkin win for A Real Pain, and there's some movies in there that I liked, and others not as much. Blah blah blah. But they got Mick Jagger to present for Best Original Song. They said they wanted to get Bob Dylan, but Bob Dylan said get somebody younger, and I am younger. It's just amazing. Are the Stones done touring? I don't think so. I do not think so. Keith Richards, evidence that heroin is a preservative. Alrighty, 1-800-520-1234. Hey, there are plenty of good reasons to buy gold and silver. Every once in a while, you get that occasional bank failure. You get that digital currency volatility. If you're tired of that roller coaster ride, AmFed Coin and Bullion is my choice for precious metals, just like you. And if you ask the AmFed owner, Nick Grovich, to simplify the case for precious metals, here's what he'll tell you. Remember FDR? I don't firsthand, but I'm aware of him. FDR recalls the gold in circulation, paid people with paper money. they got a $20 bill for a $20 gold piece. Today, that $20 bill, not even a half tank of gas. The $20 gold piece, $2,900. Which would you rather own? AmFed Coin and Bullion. Nick's been in the industry over 42 years, and he's proud of providing transparency and fair pricing to build trusted relationships. So if you're interested in buying or selling, call Nick and his team. AmFed Coin and Bullion, 1-800-221-7694, 1-800-221-7694, AmericanFederal.com, AmericanFederal.com. All righty. Well, time's dwindling. How it does fly when you're having fun, and we certainly how do you not have fun the day after a speech like that? But plenty of things to talk about, all kinds of developments in the news. Glad you folks are here. Let's talk to the folks who are here on the phone lines at 1-800-520-1234. Let's head just down the road from me in Red Oak, part of Dallas, Texas. Lonnie, hi. Mark Davis in for you. How you doing?
I just about said good morning, Mark, but it's good afternoon, Mark.
Old habits die hard.
Yeah. I think Mr. Green should be censured. I didn't think it was right for him to be on national TV and try to wrestle the title of being Texas' most ignorant representative away from Jasmine Crockett.
I know. Yeah, Jasmine Crockett called and said, man, that was out of bounds. Hey, Lottie, thank you. This is the little tug of war I've had going on. I mean, Al Green is a representative from my state, but not a representative of my state, if you know what I mean. He's not representative of the Texas way of doing things. His vote. People asked me this morning, yeah, but Mark, his voters might have loved it. Maybe so. Just south of me here in the southern end of Dallas County, Jasmine Crockett, whom you can find everywhere making a complete fool of herself. She's kind of a rock star, nationally speaking. She's catnip for MSNBC. But I know people in South Dallas, and which means I know some Democrats down there, because that's about all they have in South Dallas in District 30. And many of them remember the relatively honorable service. The honorable service. Everything's relative, meaning that she was the kind of Democrat that even a conservative like me could have some respect for, because she had some respect for herself and for the party and for some semblance of decorum. In this crazy era of Democrats, do they think they're helping themselves? So the question arose, Al Green, for his antics, should he be censured? It's tempting to just ignore him, because that's exactly what he deserves. But he also deserves censure. So that would be a good idea, I believe, as well. We're in St. Charles, Illinois. Anthony, Mark Davis, in for you. How are you doing? Welcome.
Hello, Mark.
Hey.
Yes. How are you? Nice to see you. Nice to hear from you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Last night I was had the privilege to spend a watch party, an elegant watch party in Rolling Meadows, and it was so wonderful. I was almost beside myself. I was with all these good people, but basically, I just wanted to say that while I was listening to the speech, I just couldn't help but feel of the unity of America. We're united in feeling and purpose, and in our duty of opportunity to serve. And I think the big thing that President Trump is trying to do is he's trying to make our government become pure and incorrupt in all its parts, united in all of its conception of duty and high resolve to perform it in the face of all. And I think that, as previously mentioned by some of our other contributors, if Kamala Harris had been elected, we would be in the dark. But now we are in the light, with the light all about us, and I look to nothing but good days ahead.
Anthony, that is poetic, literally poetic. Thank you very, very much. Let's talk a little bit about what unifies people and what should unify people. If you have a president coming at you with conservative things, I expect liberals to push back. Conversely, if you have a president coming at us with liberal things, I, as a conservative, I'm going to push back. Unity on topical things, ideological things, is impossible. But there were things Trump offered up that involved basic human decency, and they should have unified everybody. But today's Democrats just couldn't do it. Not a lot pretty on display from the Democrat side of things last evening. So I'm sitting there doing a show. Dwayne's producing a show. Adam's doing great. Harley's screening calls, just the team doing what the team does. And as last night played out, and as we've talked about them today, Dwayne has apparently compiled the list called Things Democrats Are Against. So let's see what things that they boldly stood out against. The way that when they drew, doggone it, Dwayne, they drew lines in the sand. Let's see what these people stand for.
This is the list of things that Democrats refused to applaud last night.
There you go. There you go.
The capturing of an ISIS terrorist that masterminded the Abbey Gate attack.
Yeah, there you are.
A young boy fighting brain cancer.
Oh, a DJ. Yep.
A call to lower taxes for middle-class Americans.
I can't have that.
Americans joining the military in record numbers.
Oh, no, really can't have that.
Law and order, they're against.
just
Taking down illegal revenge porn. Protecting women's sports.
Oh, we know that.
The United States of America. They could applaud that.
Exactly.
Working together to make America great again. Ending the harmful electric vehicle mandate. Cutting regs to unleash American prosperity. They couldn't applaud that. Ending censorship and bringing back free speech. Can't have that.
No.
Ending DEI. Recognizing only two sexes. Can't have that.
Nope.
Defeating inflation. They're against. Unleashing American energy. Ending waste, fraud, and abuse in government. Ending taxes on tips, overtime, and senior Social Security.
Yes.
Bringing manufacturing home to America. They couldn't applaud.
No.
Securing historic investments in American chip manufacturing. Removing illegal alien killers, rapists, and drug dealers from our streets. Securing our border. Declaring the brutal Tren de Aragua gang as a foreign terrorist organization. Waging war on the deadly cartels trafficking deadly drugs into our country. Punishing cop killers with the death penalty.
Oh, no.
Promoting health and wellness among Americans. Can't have that.
No.
Protecting our kids from radical gender ideology. Ending the sexual mutilation of America's youth. The return of American Mark Fogel from a Russian prison. Declaring America's youth are perfect as God made them. Oh, now that's just the worst.
Just a bridge too far. Dwayne, thank you.
Ending wokeness in the U.S. military, restoring American shipbuilding, a student getting accepted to West Point, improving American defenses, and pursuing peace in Ukraine. All those things could not get an applause line out of a Democrat.
Thank goodness we have a party that will stand up against things that are truly, truly a scourge on our society, Dwayne. Thank you for delivering that laundry list of things Democrats will not abide.
And thank you, Democrats, for making the show prep possible.
It is. It's the gift that keeps on giving. Thank you, Dwayne. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Harley. Thank you, Hugh. Much appreciated. Speaking of Dwayne, he'll be doing the Friday show. The great Ed Morrissey will be here tomorrow. I'm Mark Davis.